Matthew, you're quite active on Twitter, and that's how we met, right? And so, how do you see how important is online PNL in a teacher's life, and what benefits do you see from social media that social media brings to teachers in particular?
I think it's really important just because it's so connective,
Mm-hmm.
and teachers can really, I mean, it's a multiplier of connections and ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, anything that does that, I think Twitter does it pretty well. I mean, it took me a while to figure out how it works, a long time, really. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still figuring out how it actually works and what are the best
How long
strategies.
have you used Twitter for?
I'm not sure. I can't remember. I think it was on and off for a while, so I don't know
Mm.
when the actual start date was. And I've had a couple different like identities on Twitter, a
Yeah.
couple different handles. So I
Mm-hmm.
was Newbie Celta when I started as a Celta trainer. I became Newbie Celta, and that's when I got active. And
Mm-hmm.
then eventually, for whatever reason, that kind of ran its course, and I wanted to start fresh or something. I don't know why, but I went back to my original handle, which I think I started when I was still in Thailand. So it was before 2011. So I was on there probably 2010 or
Wow,
something.
it's a long time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the first maybe I didn't get active until 2014ish, I
I
think.
see. Mm-hmm. Do you use other platforms as often as Twitter?
Not really. Twitter's the main show. I'm on Twitter way too much. I'm totally addicted to it. Um, it's like it's on my
It is
computer and
addictive.
walking down the street. I'll check it on my phone and stuff like
Uh-huh.
that. It's very addictive just because it's this constant flow
Yeah.
of thoughts and ideas. But I mean, I use Facebook for ELT a little bit, but when I started adding ELT stuff, I kind of wish I had created a Matthew Noble ELT Facebook
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's all mixed up, and I don't really, probably should try to do that. I don't know if anyone has thoughts on how to disentangle and start afresh, but
Mm-hmm.
um, itdi.pro is kind of another community that I tend to
Yeah.
interact with and on the blog and all those things. So there's lots of connected, a whole connected cluster of
Mm-hmm.
PLN activity. But I find that Twitter is a nice node for those things, a nice hub.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what are your favorite ELT books and authors?
Oh, so I have a lot of
I
I
know,
have
so
a lot
you
of favorite
can
books. I'll
just say it.
choose a couple. I like Teaching Unplugged. Uh, this is
That's
a
a
different
classic.
concept.
Yeah.
Teaching Unplugged is great because it's just so fresh to me, just so fresh to even if I'm doing really
This is
structured, you know,
Scott, right? Scott and Luke.
yeah,
Yeah.
Scott Thornberry, Luke Meddings,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I would show that before I read Teaching Unplugged, I read this book called Learner's
Can't
Lives
see
as
the cover.
it's
Learning
called Learner's
lives
Lives as
as
Curriculum.
curriculum. Mm-hmm.
It's an ESOL book. It's a book written with adults, immigrant learners in the U.S. in mind.
Mm.
Uh, but even just I remember I haven't even read the entire book, but just the title, "Learners' Lives as Curriculum," is
Mm-hmm.
totally like a turning phrase for me. So it was really helpful to me to just think of that. I love this book by Johnson and Golombek, Teachers' Narrative Inquiry as Professional Development.
Ah, I haven't seen this one.
Yeah, it's a Cambridge Language Education series edited by Jack C. Richards, and it's all
Mm.
about how teachers tell their stories and how teachers narrate their lives as teachers and classroom events and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and how that's done, it's just how that's researched and how that's used in research, and it's just really fascinating because I love just teacher stories and the teacher's view of the classroom.
Yeah.
It's totally fascinating. So even though, I mean, the idea that learner-centeredness does nothing to take out the centrality of the teacher, you know.
Would you recommend those books to experienced teachers, both experienced and inexperienced as well?
Yeah, I don't know if I could have. I don't know. I don't know if I would have or could have really read a book like that when I was a younger, unthinking teacher in lots of ways. But yeah, I may have looked at it and thought it was just too heavy, and I wouldn't have had a lot of context for it. But that kind of thing, I think a book like this, what's it called? The Experience of Language Teaching by Rose Senior, is a great book for a newer teacher who's looking for a kind of. I mean, it's almost novelesque in how it describes the life in ELT. So yeah, it's fantastic. That's what I would recommend to a novice teacher.
And going back to your blog, you have a series of blog posts on teacher diaries, right? Where you post your notes, your personal notes, and the impression I had is that you're really devoted to your CLTs, yeah, and which is amazing. And but what are your biggest challenges you've encountered so far as a CELTA tutor? How long have you been a CELTA tutor?
About I can never remember the month that I started. It was so I've been at least 2 years.
2 years,
Roughly, I think it's been almost 2.5 years. So pretty short time. I'm still like figuring this thing out, and I'm really fresh. And there's lots of people who've been doing this a long time. And every time I meet a veteran CELTA person, you know, it's like, wow, I'm such a neophyte in that. But in the first 2 years, I would say one of the big challenges is finding the best way of giving feedback, the way that feels, you know, the highest number of the highest level of both like empathetic and incisive and forward-looking and practical, and then, you know, in a way that maybe engages the teachers to think about feedback in itself. I mean, lots of goals for all of that, but just not to make it routine or routinized. I think is a worthy place to challenge yourself, and it's quite difficult. And sometimes you're so exhausted. Really can feel exhausting to watch teachers, especially new teachers, for 2 hours, take like a 10-minute break, and then come back and have a way to revisit the experience in a way but so typically I try to give the observees, the other trainees, and the person, you know, as much of a useful way to talk about it amongst themselves as possible, and try to be a facilitator. But it can be a challenge not to swoop in and tell them what happened and why it happened and what they should do about it, because after watching lots and lots of lessons, you can almost predict. It becomes quite predictable what a new teacher might do in lots of situations, and you almost feel like you have the master key to explain it all. So it's a challenge to balance those things.
Do you believe that most teachers who take CELTA feel a bit intimidated by some feedback they receive? Yeah, or are they still a bit fearful? Or
yeah, I think so, but I think that can absolutely happen, and they can feel overloaded by too much feedback, or feel like it's unfair for an expert to suddenly come down from. I mean, it can feel very top down and very, very prescriptive to some people, and even if it's not necessarily that way, it can be perceived that way. so I remember my CELTA, I had one trainer who was particularly direct and is sort of infamous for his directness, and you end up loving him at the end of the course. But lots of people cry along the way at some point, because he just didn't help you to deal with the feedback. It was in a very raw form.
Yeah, he wouldn't. Sorry.
It's just a challenge for the trainees on a course like that.
Yeah. Okay. Right, Matthew. Thank you so much for this interview. It was lovely.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay cool.
You too. Thank you. Speak soon.